A cardiologist once told a patient something that stuck with me. He said, "Your fasting blood sugar is what your doctor sees. Your postprandial blood sugar is what is actually aging your blood vessels." After 60, the 2 hours after a meal are when the most damage accumulates quietly inside arteries, nerves, and kidneys. Not from what you eat, from how high your blood sugar climbs after you eat it, and how long it stays there before coming back down. Onions eaten the right way, paired with the right thing, address that 2-hour window directly, not as a drug, not as a treatment, as a daily food habit that costs almost nothing and that real research says creates a measurable difference in what happens to blood sugar between the first bite and the moment your body settles again. Here is what most people do not know is happening inside their body after 60. When you eat a meal containing carbohydrates, your digestive system sends enzymes into the small intestine to break those carbohydrates into simple glucose. The faster those enzymes work, the faster glucose floods into your bloodstream, the higher the spike. And the higher the spike, the more work your body has to do to bring it back down. In younger adults, that cleanup process is fast. The pancreas senses the rising glucose and releases insulin quickly. The cells that use that insulin respond efficiently. Blood sugar climbs, peaks, and comes back down within about 90 minutes. In adults over 60, each step in that chain slows. The pancreas response is delayed. The cells become less sensitive. The peak climbs higher than it used to, and the recovery takes longer. Research tracking postprandial glucose patterns across age groups consistently finds that adults over 60 experience both higher peaks and longer recovery times after identical meals compared to younger adults eating the same food. The same plate of rice or pasta or bread that barely moved the needle at 40 can now keep blood sugar elevated for 2 full hours at 65. That prolonged elevation is what researchers mean when they talk about postprandial hyperglycemia. The word is complicated, but the experience is not. Most people over 60 know it as the crash, the fog after lunch that makes concentration difficult, the overwhelming desire to sit down after a meal that should have been fine, the tiredness that arrives not at bedtime, but at 2 in the afternoon and will not leave. That is not digestion. That is your blood sugar climbing too high, too fast, and taking too long to come back down. And the most important thing to understand about this is that it can be happening every single day, multiple times a day, without producing any dramatic symptom that would make you think something needs addressing. It simply becomes the texture of how you feel after eating. And after a few years, it becomes what you think getting older feels like. I am Dr. Natalie Brooks, and I want to tell you about one combination that the research points toward as genuinely useful here, not because it replaces anything your doctor has prescribed, but because it works through a mechanism that almost no food and blood sugar conversation ever explains clearly. That mechanism starts with quercetin, the main active compound inside onions. Quercetin does something very specific in your digestive system. It does not work like insulin. It does not signal your pancreas to do anything different. It works earlier in the process, at the point where carbohydrates are being broken down before glucose ever enters the blood. When you eat a meal containing carbohydrates alongside onions, quercetin sits in the small intestine and competes directly with a group of enzymes called alpha-glucosidases. These enzymes are responsible for breaking complex carbohydrates into simple glucose molecules. When quercetin occupies the space those enzymes need, the breakdown slows. Glucose enters the blood more gradually. The spike becomes a slower, lower rise rather than a sharp climb. Think of it as partially closing a tap rather than turning it off entirely. The water still flows, but it flows at a rate the body can manage more comfortably rather than flooding in all at once. A controlled study published in a peer-reviewed diabetes journal tested this directly in people with type 2 diabetes. Participants who received quercetin before a carbohydrate challenge showed a significant dampening of the blood sugar spike during the 3 hours that followed, compared to those who received a placebo. The researchers noted that the effect was specifically on carbohydrate-induced spikes, meaning quercetin was working on the digestion process itself, not just on fasting glucose levels. That is a meaningful distinction. Most people focus on fasting blood sugar because that is the number their doctor measures. But the postprandial spike is the number that accumulates its damage daily, meal by meal, over years and decades. Now here is the part most people miss entirely. Quercetin is fat-soluble. That means your digestive system needs a small amount of fat present to absorb it properly. When you eat raw onion on its own without any fat in the meal, a significant portion of the quercetin passes through your digestive system without being absorbed at all. It leaves in the way it came in, without ever reaching the small intestine in a form that can do its work. This is why so many people eat onions regularly and feel as though the benefit they have heard about never quite materializes. It is not that the research is wrong. It is that the preparation is. But fat alone is not the full answer either, because even with fat present, quercetin still faces the harsh environment of your stomach acid before it ever reaches the small intestine where it needs to work. And after 60, stomach acid varies considerably from meal to meal, which means the delivery of quercetin to the right place at the right time is inconsistent at best. This is where the combination changes everything. The food that addresses both problems simultaneously, the absorption problem and the stability problem, is apple cider vinegar. Most people who have heard of apple cider vinegar and blood sugar know it has some general effect on glucose control. What most people do not know is the specific mechanism that makes it particularly powerful when eaten alongside onions at a meal, rather than on its own. And the distinction between eating them together versus separately is the entire point of this video. Apple cider vinegar contains acetic acid. When you consume a small amount of acetic acid at the start of a meal, two things happen that are directly relevant to the 2-hour blood sugar window. First, the acetic acid slows gastric emptying. That is the process by which food moves from your stomach into the small intestine where it gets absorbed. When gastric emptying slows, glucose enters your bloodstream more gradually because the food is releasing its carbohydrates more slowly. Not dramatically, but measurably. A study measuring this effect found that vinegar consumed before a high carbohydrate meal reduced the postprandial glucose spike in the hour following the meal by approximately 20% in people with normal blood sugar, and even more significantly in people with insulin resistance. Second, acetic acid improves the stability of quercetin during digestion. Research published in the European Journal of Nutrition found that acetic acid creates a slightly protective environment around quercetin molecules as they travel through the acidic conditions of the stomach, meaning more of the quercetin survives intact and arrives at the small intestine where it can actually compete with those alpha-glucosidase enzymes. So what the combination produces is this. Apple cider vinegar slows how fast carbohydrates arrive in the bloodstream. It simultaneously protects the quercetin from onions that is doing its own work on carbohydrate breakdown. Two different mechanisms working on the same problem at the same time. Neither one replaces the other. Neither one alone is as effective as both together. Neither one replaces the other. Neither one alone is as effective as both together. And it is not complicated to use this combination. In fact, it fits into an existing meal with almost no adjustment. Here is the preparation that gives you the most of what both foods offer. Take half a medium red onion. Red onions contain consistently higher levels of quercetin than white or yellow varieties, often 2 to 3 times more. Slice it thinly. Place the slices in a small bowl. Now add 1 tablespoon of raw, unfiltered apple cider vinegar, the kind that looks slightly cloudy rather than perfectly clear. The cloudiness is the fermentation byproduct that contains the active acetic acid in its most potent form. Stir the onion slices gently so the vinegar coats them evenly. Leave them for 10 minutes at room temperature before eating them. Those 10 minutes serve a specific purpose. During that time, the vinegar begins working into the onion cells, and the quercetin molecules are being coated in the protective acetic acid environment that will help them survive the stomach. The preparation also slightly softens the raw onion, which many people find easier to eat and easier on digestion. Eat this alongside your meal, not after it. The timing matters because both the quercetin and the acetic acid need to be present in your digestive system as the carbohydrates from your meal are arriving. If you eat the onion and vinegar combination after the main course, the carbohydrates are already breaking down without either protective mechanism in place. Add a small drizzle of olive oil to the bowl before eating if the flavor is too sharp. The olive oil solves the fat-soluble absorption problem described earlier and makes the quercetin significantly more bioavailable. A study measuring quercetin absorption found that consuming it alongside a fat source increased how much actually entered the bloodstream by up to 68% compared to consuming it without fat. That is not a minor difference. That is the difference between the onion doing its work and the onion passing through as flavor. You can also use this combination as a simple pre-meal ritual if eating raw onion alongside every dish does not feel practical. Mix 1 tablespoon of raw apple cider vinegar into a small glass of water and drink it 5 to 10 minutes before you sit down to eat. Then include a small portion of raw red onion somewhere in the meal itself, on a salad, alongside grilled protein, or in a simple slaw with lemon and olive oil. This approach separates the vinegar timing from the onion timing slightly, but still delivers both compounds to the digestive system before the carbohydrates from the main course begin arriving. The key in either approach is before or with the meal, never after. One additional detail worth knowing: raw red onion has far more quercetin than cooked onion. A study in food chemistry found that just 10 minutes of cooking reduces quercetin content by approximately 44%. The preparation above uses raw onions specifically for this reason. The apple cider vinegar softens the sharpness enough that most people find it acceptable, even if raw onion alone was previously too intense for them. If you are currently taking medication for blood sugar management, diabetes, or blood pressure, please have a conversation with your doctor before adding apple cider vinegar to your daily routine. Acetic acid can affect how certain medications are absorbed and how quickly blood sugar responds to medication. This is not a reason to avoid it. It is a reason to introduce it with your doctor informed. For people without existing conditions, this combination is as straightforward as a salad dressing. The realistic expectation over the first few weeks is not a dramatic transformation. Blood sugar does not change overnight, and this combination is not a medication. What it is doing is creating slightly better conditions inside your digestive system at every meal where you use it. The glucose still rises, but the rise is more gradual. The peak is lower. The recovery is faster. Over weeks and months, this compounds. Research on postprandial glucose management consistently shows that the cumulative effect of reducing meal-by-meal spikes is significantly greater than any single measurement would suggest. Each meal handled more gently means less wear on the artery walls, less demand on the pancreas, and less of the oxidative stress that accumulates in the tissues most sensitive to elevated glucose over time. The blood vessels that were silently dealing with elevated glucose 2 hours after every meal are dealing with a little less of it, day after day, meal after meal. That is how meaningful long-term change in postprandial blood sugar actually happens, not from one dramatic intervention. From a daily habit that costs the price of an onion and a bottle of vinegar and takes 10 minutes of resting time before you sit down to eat. That cardiologist who talked about the 2 hours after meals understood something that most health conversations miss. The number your doctor reads from your fasting blood test in the morning is taken at the calmest point of your metabolic day. Your body has had 8 hours to settle. Nothing is being digested. Nothing is being processed. Everything looks relatively orderly. But that number does not tell you what is happening at noon or at 6 in the evening, or at any point during the active hours when food is arriving and your body is doing the work of handling it. The 2 hours after meals is where the real metabolic picture of your day exists. And for most people over 60, that picture is more demanding than their doctor's morning snapshot suggests. He was saying that what we measure in the morning at the doctor's office is only part of the picture. The rest of the picture plays out at your kitchen table 3 times a day while you live your life and feel whatever you feel after eating. This combination is a simple, inexpensive way to begin changing what that picture looks like. Not instantly, not perfectly, but consistently. And consistency is the only thing that ever really moves these numbers in a direction worth measuring. If you found something useful here today, the most valuable thing you can do with it is pass it to someone else over 60 who eats meals every day without knowing this is an option. Share this video with them. And if you want to continue following research-backed information about the everyday food choices that matter most after 60, subscribe to this channel. New videos go up regularly, and each one is built around the same principle as today. The food that is already in your kitchen may be doing more or less than you think. And the combination you choose at your next meal is one of the most quiet and powerful decisions you make for your health this week.